Okay, now let's talk about what is SOAR. Now, before we talk about SOAR, let me see if there is any question from any participant so far, because this completes the fundamental for SIEM. Before
Yeah,
we move
Raghuveer,
on
I
to
have
SOAR,
one question.
please go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to onboard devices like network devices, endpoints into SIEM solution, do we need to
Mhm.
specify whether it will be pull type or push type like that?
You want to say from the storage perspective, tiering perspective?
Like if you want to just collect the logs, yeah, from storage perspective also, and if
No,
just
so
want to
while you are
onboarding
collecting
perspective,
the
yeah,
log,
yeah.
okay, so while you are collecting the logs, Mayur, you will not specify whether those logs will be stored in hot, cold, and archive tier. You will collect the logs. You will configure the log ingestion method, whether it's a collector, whether it is an agent, whether it is an API, whether it is syslog. You will just configure it to export, stream, forward the logs to the SIEM solution. In the log repository, where you see all the logs stored in a specific order. For example, I've shown you in Microsoft Sentinel that they are stored into the table. So you will navigate to those specific tables, or you navigate to that specific log repository, and there you will configure the retention settings. Okay.
Yeah, retention rating is fine, but like if you want to just push it or pull it, that where we have to specify. By default, it will be like a push type or pull type
It
that we
by
want to
default it
specify.
will be hot. The default retention is hot. So all the logs that you are storing, they are getting stored into the hot tier unless you explicitly specify the behavior for those logs in terms of for how long they will remain stored in the hot tier, and when, after how many days, or after what duration they will move to other low cost storage tiers. You will need to define it manually.
And these solutions like network devices, firewalls, they by default will push the logs, or SIEM solution will pull the logs from them. How it will be?
It differs from solution to solution. As I said, some solution used pull-based methods, some solution use push method. So
How about
for
CrowdStrike?
networking devices, uh, so CrowdStrike uses both methods, pull and push method. For some devices, it has pull configuration available. For some devices, it is push configuration available. Pull basically means you are configuring the solution to pull the logs from that data source. Push means the solution is pushing logs to CrowdStrike. So we'll look into that detail when we get into the CrowdStrike IGSIM.
Okay, fine.
Okay. All right. Next participant. So Mansing has a question. So what do we actually mean by log injection? Uh, are you saying ingestion or injection? Mansing, is that injection or ingestion? These are two different things. Ingestion means you are bringing logs into the SIEM solution. You're ingesting logs, you're putting logs, you're feeding logs. And injection is a type of attack. Yeah. So ingestion means you're bringing logs into the system. And injection means a type of attack that typically happens at layer 7 of OSI, which is related to application layer. So we have injection attack, SQL injection attack, which is one type of attack, cross-site scripting attack. This is another type of attack that is injection is all of it. Any other question from any participant? Okay, Stephen, in SES environment,
Hello.
how the coverage is done from compliance perspective for banking? Okay, uh, Stephen, what do you mean by SES environment?
Like most of the like solution like Sentinel or CrowdStrike or Google SecOps, they have a SaaS solution where we don't have the control on the back
Mhm,
end, right? So
mhm,
when the logs get ingested, it gets stored or a hot bucket, like what you have explained, hot, warm, and
mhm,
cold. But
mhm,
at any given point in time, like from the compliance perspective for banking sector,
mhm,
they need a 3 years
mhm,
of retention, and on the fly, they need at least 3 month log search. Okay, so in that scenario, how this solution works, because if it is on premises, we know we can configure a SAN or NAS storage, and we can restore whenever the audit requirements comes, we can restore the data and show them. But in the cloud environment, how to do that?
That's exactly what I showed you. That see, when it comes to compliance, compliance basically means that you need to store, not only store, you need to store securely, safely, right? So when it comes to compliance, they basically say that your log repository, where you are storing the logs, must be encrypted. The logs must be encrypted, and the repository must follow principle of least privilege. You should restrict access to that log storage, log repository, to limited individuals who only need access. And when they need access, you should have the concept of just-in-time access so that they can request access and they can access it. And you should also have that log encrypted at any point in time. That's what compliance enforces. The second thing is retention. So when it comes to retention, as I said, we basically configure retention at the repository level. So when it comes to retention, for example, you want to configure retention, you will configure retention in Microsoft Sentinel at the table level, because at the end of the day, the logs are stored into the tables. So you will configure it at the table level. Similarly, when it comes to retention in CrowdStrike, you need to agree with CrowdStrike, with your CrowdStrike team on the retention part. They will let you know about the retention policies, because in CrowdStrike, you have very limited option to configure retention here. So you basically agree on the retention part that, okay, by per day log ingestion volume is going to be anywhere from 10 to 20 GB, and I want to retain this log volume for 7 days, 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, all that you need to configure, all that you need to discuss and agree with your solution. So some solution provides you capability to configure it. Some solution require you to basically discuss it with the OEM and have it configured accordingly. And it is the OEM which manages it in the backend. For example, over here in CrowdStrike, you can see these retention is configured, right? Is there an option to change these retentions right now? No, I don't see an option anywhere. Do I see an edit button? No. So if I want to change the retention period, I will need to raise a support request with CrowdStrike, and then I can discuss that this is what I want to change. Hope that answers your question, Steven.
Yeah, somewhat. Like when we come to the cloud front, I have more concern, because what happens, sir, like now, uh, when storing the data, it doesn't charge, but when we retrieve the data, it charges most of the SaaS solution.
Absolutely.
So like if
Absolutely.
we, from the engineering perspective, if we want to design the solution for CloudStrike and all that, so once we come to that thing, I will ask the questions.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say, that when you want to design a solution, the design is directly proportional to what your client needs from their personal preferences plus compliance requirements versus what they can afford to pay. It's a combination of both. See, for example, my client, let's say I'm a banking, I operate in banking domain. I'm governed by RBI. RBI says that you maintain last 10 years of transaction data of your customers. That's what my compliance is. Now, against this, what I can afford to pay? Probably I cannot afford to pay this data to be stored in hot tier for 10 years. In that case, I will discuss it with my vendor and I will say, please let me know the cost of each tier. What is the minimum duration I can keep data in each tier? And accordingly, you will discuss and conclude what tier you will use. And you will also discuss with them the rehydration charges, that when I store some data into archive tier, when I need to analyze that data, how much time will it take for you to put that data into the hot tier so that I can analyze it? And what will be the hydration charges that you will charge? So that is all you need to discuss and agree with your OEM. This is part of design and architecture. Even before you start
Yeah.
to implement the solution, you will have those discussions concluded, agreed, written in the form of an agreement, signed between both the parties. So there is no deviation in the past, in the future. Make sense?
Got it. Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, sir, what log collections are supported in CrowdStrike NG-SIEM? Mohit, I will talk about it when we reach to that level. Right now, we are trying to understand SIEM and SOAR from fundamental perspective. From tomorrow onwards, it will be all CrowdStrike SIEM. Then I will answer all these questions in terms of what are different log ingestion methods supported by CrowdStrike. All right. The last question. What log collections are used for data ingestion CrowdStrike? Will the log go into console only for the modules that we have enabled in Qualys subscription? Mansingh, how come Qualys is coming here? Okay, no worries. I'll answer the question. So first of all, Qualys is not a log management solution. It's a vulnerability management solution. So in Qualys, we basically onboard endpoints, servers. Basically, we onboard endpoints. Endpoints basically means your desktop, laptop, servers. So you deploy Qualys Cloud Agent, or you deploy a scanner appliance, and you basically scan those subjects or scan those systems for the purpose of identifying vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are different, logs are different. So so to answer your question, you say how will the logs go into the console only for modules that we've enabled in Qualys? However, what you can do, let's say you can also ingest Qualys logs into your SIEM solution. For example, and what kind of logs you want to ingest? Let's say all of a sudden, on a specific day, you see hundreds of vulnerabilities detected within a short span of time. So it's a security deviation, because on an average, you see 10, 15 vulnerabilities, but today, all of a sudden, hundreds of vulnerabilities are detected by Qualys. So there is something not right somewhere. You want to analyze it. So you want to send those logs to SIEM solution. The other use case could be from vulnerability management is for a specific endpoint. There are more than acceptable vulnerabilities identified. So you have a critical database system that has 10, 15 vulnerabilities identified. On an average, it receives 1 or 2 vulnerabilities that you from time to time you resolve those vulnerabilities. But this morning, you have 100 plus vulnerabilities identified by Qualys for that critical database system. So it is a matter to investigate. And that is where you can configure Qualys log ingestion into CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1, Microsoft Sentinel, SecOps, and you can configure a query that will run once in an hour or probably once in 5 minutes and check if there has been any incident of more than expected vulnerabilities generated across the solution or across a specific subject or endpoint. That's how you can relate Qualys to a SIEM solution. Stephen, it's a scanner integrated into QRadar, so it will scan the vulnerability and not audit log. See, you don't integrate a scanner. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's understand it from Sentinel, because I want to reserve, CrowdStrike from tomorrow. So for example, in Sentinel, if I go to data connectors, or if I navigate to Content Hub, and this is the last question, then we'll take a short break and I'll continue with the session. I need to finish this today. At the end of the session, I can take more questions, and people who need to leave for some personal work or who are getting late, just like my participants from North America and Canada, they can leave for the day if they wish.
Raghu sir, Hardik this side.
Okay, so over here, I hope you guys are looking at my screen. Let's look at Qualys. Let's see if there is any integration available for Qualys. So you can see we have an integration available for Qualys. So what I can do in Microsoft Sentinel, I can basically ingest logs from Qualys. So I can configure this solution. This solution basically contains, you can see Qualys solution. This solution contains the information. So if I just go ahead and install this solution, you can see this solution contains a connector. With this connector, I will be able to connect Qualys with Microsoft Sentinel. It contains a parser also. There is a parser. Why? because Qualys will generate logs in certain format that Microsoft Sentinel doesn't understand. So the parser will standardize those logs and then store them into Microsoft Sentinel tables in the same format as Microsoft Sentinel understands or Microsoft Sentinel uses. It contains a workbook which is nothing but a dashboard wherein you can see some information about Qualys, how Qualys is behaving. It contains two analytics rules. Only two rules are there. If you want to see what those rules are or what exactly you're trying to investigate or find from Qualys, you will see that those two rules will basically identify information. So here's the two rule. These are the two rules, which is high number of urgent vulnerabilities detected. All of a sudden, multiple vulnerabilities are detected. Urgent vulnerabilities of a specific severity. And the other rule is high severity detected across multiple hosts, single host or multiple hosts. These are the two use cases that you can configure. So with these two use cases, you will have better idea in terms of what is happening. You have some playbooks also, which are workflows, automation. With these automations, you will be able to probably move that system to a forensic network, isolate that system if multiple vulnerabilities are detected. They could be related to a ransomware. So you want to protect your environment from lateral movement. So you can move that system to an isolated network. You can probably disable something. So you have some, some automation playbooks also available. So this is how it basically happens. Now, similarly, if I want to see this information, whether I have this information available in CrowdStrike, whether CrowdStrike has this solution, you will go to connections and you will search for the solutions here. Whether the solution from Qualys is available. If the solution is not available, then you will need to identify that if there is no out-of-box solution available using which you can integrate Qualys or any vulnerability management solution with CrowdStrike NG-SIEM, then what is my next option? Do I need to write a custom parser for it? Do I need to configure Qualys to export, to send logs to a syslog, and from there I can feed it into CrowdStrike? Do I need to see if there is any API-based ingestion available? So that is a matter of investigation. That is a matter of discovery, because you will not find everything out of the box. And remember, every solution is different. Microsoft Sentinel is probably more mature when it comes to integrations because it has been there for a long time. When it comes to QRadar and Splunk, they are more prominent for on-premises environments. They lack capability when it comes to cloud. When it comes to CrowdStrike, NG SIEM, Sentinel-1 AI SIEM, they are AI-driven solutions. They do not require you to do a lot of heavy lifting. Most of the tasks they do it by themselves by using various machine learning models that they use in the backend. So every solution is different. And that is where it is required, it is expected for you to know a minimum of 2 solutions or 3 solutions if you want to be successful in this industry. Because if you just tell somebody that I only know Microsoft Sentinel, that will not do the job. You need to have knowledge of a minimum of 2-3 solutions across each category that you deal with. So when it comes to EDR, a minimum of 2 solutions. When it comes to SIEM and SOAR, minimum of 2 solutions. When it comes to email security, minimum of 2 solutions. That is what will take you places, will make you successful, or will get you more responsibilities or higher responsibilities. That will make you an architect. That will make you a true consultant. If you just know one solution, that will not help you in the long run. It will probably help you stay where you are and lead a peaceful life. But then you will always run a risk of getting laid off, which is quite common in IT these days. Let's talk about SOAR. Let's first look at the architecture of SOAR. I hope my screen is visible to everyone. So what is SOAR here? Now, if you go by the presentation, SOAR stands for Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. Orchestration, automation, and response. Now, this is the layer which is complementing the SIEM solution. It is also known as action layer on the top of SIEM solution. What do you mean by orchestration? Orchestration basically means that it comes pre-configured with a lot of integrations. That's orchestration. Automation, it can automate certain tasks that a SOC engineer would perform while investigating a detection, an alert or incident, or after that investigation is complete, when they need to take an action, they will perform certain activities. Those activities can be automated. That's what SOAR is all about. So SOAR is the automation layer for SIEM. And without SOAR, SIEM is incomplete. We are living in the year 2026. We are living in the age of AI. Nowadays, we see AI is taking over from human for most of the activities that a human would do manually. So consider SOAR at that level, which you can configure to automate certain behaviors, to automate certain activities, certain actions that you would have taken instead manually. That's what SOAR is all about. So it says SIEM is excellent at surfacing findings. SIEM can do the findings. It can identify incidents. It can identify malicious behavior. It can identify deviations. But every finding would need enrichment. Enrichment basically means additional information. It would need a decision to be made and an action against that decision. For example, let's say you receive an alert or you receive a log for phishing attempt. There has been a phishing attempt that has been detected in your environment. So what SIEM will do? SIEM will detect that phishing email. That's what SIEM will do. Now, where exactly SOAR comes into the picture? So what SOAR will do, SOAR will basically extract, it will extract from that phishing email, SOAR will extract the important information from that email. From that email header, it will extract the URL. It will extract the domain. It will extract if there is any attachment which is there in the email. So it will extract the IP address from, the source IP from where the email is originated. SOAR will quickly extract all of that information, and then it will compare that information with open source intelligence. So it will quickly check that IP. It will look for reputation analysis of that IP. It will check whether that IP has been blacklisted or has been involved into any threat in the past. It will look whether that domain is legitimate. It will scan that attachment and see if there is any executable in that attachment. If yes, it will get the corresponding file hash and check that file hash on VirusTotal, Alien Vault, Malware Bazaar, different open source intelligence solution, or it will compare it from threat intelligence feed, which is available to itself, and it will quickly identify the reputation of it. And if it sees that the attachment contains some malware, or that email has come from a malicious domain, or that email involves a blacklisted IP address, it will be quick to block that IP address into firewall policy. Now I'm talking in CrowdStrike context. So it will block that IP address into firewall policy. It will add that file hash into indicator of compromise. And it will also block that IP address into the firewall policy. Because in firewall policy, you can block both IP address as well as domains. That's what it will do, right? That's what SOAR is all about. And that's exactly what you see here in this example. So in this example, you see how SOAR is working, that a suspicious email is received. As soon as that email is received, a log is generated. The alert is triggered into the SIEM. The SOAR will take over. So what SOAR will do? The SOAR will be configured on some. So there will be a trigger for the SOAR. So when you configure automation, you configure it using trigger. So you will configure the trigger. Trigger is an email. Trigger is a log is generated with some ID. A log is generated with certain condition that will trigger the SOAR. So SOAR, what it will do, it will quickly extract IOCs. It will extract the IP address, domain name, and any additional information from that email and analyze it. As part of analysis, it will look into threat intelligence. It will look into open source intelligence, and it will decide whether it's legitimate or non-legitimate. If it identifies that it is non-legitimate, it will proceed further and block that malicious indicator. It will block the IP address, block the domain, block the file. file hash, and then it will close the case and report that information to the management, probably generate an email that will go to the management about that activity. So it's all automation. Imagine if SOAR was not there, then you would have performed these activities automatically. After receiving that incident, you would have looked into that file, looked into that email body. You would have picked up the IP address, domain name, as well as additional information. Then you would have manually traced it. You would have manually tried to identify the reputation of that IP address from different sources. And after you were sure that yes, it's a malicious domain, it's a blacklisted IP address, it's a malware which is hidden inside the attachment, you would have blocked it by configuring CrowdStrike indicators of compromise and firewall policy. And then in the end, you would have added the note into the case that that this has been investigated and it has been identified that this is malicious. So I have gone ahead and blocked this and that, and now I'm closing this case, and you will pick up the disposition as true positive and close the case. So if I had taken a minute to explain, you would probably take a couple of minutes, probably 10-15 minutes to do the entire activity. So you are wasting 10 minutes of your time, or you are investing 10 minutes of your time. Now this investment can be automated using SOAR. So with this SOAR in place, it will automatically take care of everything. As soon as the incident is generated, the SOAR playbook will trigger, it will perform its job, and basis on the final analysis, it will take remedial action. It will generate alert if required. That's what SOAR will do. So any SIEM is incomplete without SOAR. SOAR is very important for any SIEM solution. What are the other use cases of SOAR that can happen? We'll talk about that. So what are my core capabilities of SOAR? The core capabilities are that it basically connects to disparate security tools together with APIs. I'm saying it has multiple integrations available. When we configure Fusion SOAR, we will look at these use cases. I will have shown you demonstration of how do we configure workbooks or Fusion SOAR workbooks or Fusion SOAR playbooks for automating incidents related to brute force attack, related to malware analysis, related to phishing analysis, related to dictionary attack or birthday attack or impossible time travel. I will show you all of it. Automation, it executes playbook for repetitive, well understood tasks. So this is a repetitive task that whenever there is a phishing incident, this is what you're going to do. Let's automate it. Response, it can respond. Respond in the sense, let's take the another example of brute force attack. So what happens in brute force attack? A threat actor is trying to forcefully gain entry to a system by trying to log into that system. And in order to log in, the threat actor is passing a combination of username and password, right? So threat actor is trying to gain access to a system by entering username and password, by using a pattern of username and password. Now, since the total number of attempts, failed logon attempts, went beyond 10, which is the threshold that you have put in your query, when that query runs against the log, it is able to generate incident. So the incident is generated that there was a brute force attack attempted on certain system with this employee ID, with this username, right? You got this information. What are you going to do? You will do investigation. This part I've covered in the Falcon responder part, that while investigating, you will try to see the source of the incident, basically the source IP address, and you will see if that IP address was present across other systems to correlate whether that attempt was executed on other systems also. You will also perform user search and see whether that user was involved in failed logon attempt on other systems also. So you will do investigation and correlation, right? After investigation and correlation, you will come at a conclusion that yes, we need to disable this user with immediate effect because this user has been reported to perform brute force attack or to attempt to log into multiple systems in the last 24 hours. Let's disable this user with immediate effect in the source directory in the Active Directory or Entra ID. And second, let's block this IP address also because this IP address is malicious. Two things you want to do. Probably the system on which that attack was getting performed. You also want to make sure that that system is scanned. So you want to run a full scan on that system, or you want to move that system to forensic so that detailed investigation can be made on that system. So these are certain actions that you want to take. Action number one, you want to disable the user. Action number two, you want to blocklist that IP address, source IP. Action number three, you want to run a full scan on the system. Action number four, you either want to run a full scan or you want to move that system to forensic so that it will not receive any incoming or it will not make any outgoing traffic. So these are the four actions that you want to take. You can take these actions manually, or you can configure Fusion SOAR workbooks or Logic App in Microsoft Sentinel or Sentinel-1 hyper automation playbooks. And with that, you can have all these four actions automated. So what will happen as soon as that incident will be generated, alert or threat will be generated, the playbook will quickly pick up. It will extract the IP address. It will extract the user table. It will also perform correlation in terms of looking whether that user is involved, whether that IP is involved. If it finds yes, it is involved, based on certain threshold, which is let's say 10, more than 10 attempts across 10 systems in the last 24 hours, it will go ahead and disable the user in Active Directory. It will go ahead and add that IP address into indicator of compromise. It will go ahead and run a full scan on that system, or it will move that system into network containment, which is the system will lose all incoming and outgoing traffic. So SOAR will automatically do it. This is what response is all about. So as part of response, it can perform containment of that application, system, device, user, and it can also perform remedial action, which is running a full scan, disabling access, disabling user. And in the end, it will make an entry into the case. It will, it will have a template that you will define. Basis on that template, it will make an entry that this is what investigated. Here's the outcome. Here's the analysis, and here's the outcome. And this was the action that was performed. And if required, you can also generate an email notification that will go to the admin with respect to the action that SOAR has taken. So all that you can do. This is what a SOAR can do. This is an important layer on the top of SIEM. And with this layer, you can make your SIEM operations or security monitoring operations more effective. You will reduce administrative overhead. You will reduce human man hours on it, and you will gain more efficiency. Right? So these are the examples of SOAR. Now, what could be another example of SOAR? Can anybody suggest an example of SOAR or automation that you would like to do for a specific incident or that you have seen in your environment other than what I have just explained, which is brute force attack and phishing attack? Any participant?
Like enrichment of IOCs, blocking IOCs.
That's what I've just talked about.
Yeah.
IOCs part I talked about as part of phishing. I talked about IOCs because phishing involves the source IP, a domain, and also attachment at sometimes. So that part I've already talked about. Okay, let's take an example of cloud misconfiguration. What if you have your SIEM solution getting logs from cloud also? So you have your SIEM integrated with Microsoft Azure, your SIEM integrated with AWS, your SIEM integrated with Google Cloud. And as part of that integration, you're receiving audit logs from Google, CloudTrail logs from AWS, and activity logs from Azure. One of the logs says that a container whose access type was private has been changed to anonymous. An S3 bucket whose access type was private has been changed to public. A cloud storage bucket whose access type was private has been made to public. So you receive that log from that integration. Now this is where you can have SOAR configured. So you will configure a trigger for SOAR. What it will do, it will pick up that incident. It will quickly identify the subject. Subject means that specific bucket or container. It will revert the configuration change with the immediate effect. make it private once again, and also identify the culprit who actually did it. Was it an API call, some application-based activity? Then it will block that API. Was it an activity from a user? It will generate, it will probably disable that user, or it will send an email to the manager of that user informing the manager that user has just performed an activity which is against the security best practices. And it will also create an action or a task in the ITSM solution for that manager to speak to user and put the outcome and report the findings. So SOAR can do all of it, right? That's what it can do. It can also, let's take another example. Let's say a VM has management port open to it. 338922 is open. Or somebody opened management port for a critical SQL server. So there is a virtual machine in Azure which is hosting critical database. That virtual machine is only accessible from the corporate network, but somebody has manipulated or misconfigured the NSG to allow traffic on port 3389 from internet, which is 0.0.0.0/0. Somebody did it intentionally or by mistake. So what will happen? If you have configured NSG logs, or and if you have configured NSG diagnostics into your SIEM solution, you will receive that log. That log will generate an incident. That incident will be picked up by SOAR. SOAR will automatically identify the NSG, remove that specific inbound rule, and also the same action. The person who did it, it will either disable that identity or send an email to the manager of that person asking for justification why it was done. So that's another example. So there could be n number of examples, which is blocking a port on the VM or unblocking the port, disabling or enabling user accounts, configuring anything to do with firewall. So it can do a lot of activities. Other examples, very important example of SOAR that you will remember from today onwards. And we can also try and see if we can configure that in CrowdStrike as part of this training, which is insider threat. Now, this is one area which is very difficult to identify because the other person that you are working with, the other person sitting next to you is smiling, is happy, and you don't know what's going on inside. Maybe the person is not happy because of the recent appraisal. He or she has been given meet expectation rating while he or she was expecting outstanding. Or some warning letter was recently issued to that person by his or her manager, or some disciplinary action has been initiated by HR, or the person has already resigned and serving notice period. You don't know because the person is smiling, and obviously these informations are confidential. So nobody is wearing a badge that says that I'm on resignation. I'm on notice period these days, or recently my rating was 5 or 3. Or I have recently been given a warning letter by my manager. Nobody knows all of it, right? So what SOAR can do? SOAR can identify all of it. How? You integrate your HR system with SIEM. You send HR logs into the SIEM. Now, what will happen when what the SIEM will do whenever there is a deviation from the pattern? Let's say this employee who was smiling tries to execute a logic bomb incident. I would say tries to plant a logic bomb into the system. On a critical system, this person tries to create, this person uploads some malware and put that into a task scheduler and configure some date, which is known as logic bomb. Or this person tries to access a system that he or she is not authorized to. What it will do, it will generate an incident, it will generate a log. That log will be sent to SIEM. SIEM will have its query language looking for that specific event. That event is matched. It will generate an incident. That incident will create a trigger. It will go to SOAR. Now, Fusion SOAR will pick up that incident. So what Fusion SOAR will do? Fusion SOAR will quickly look at pattern analysis. If this person in the last 15-20 days has ever tried to perform that activity, perform that action, tried to access that system, no. Then it will, since it is integrated with HR system also, it will quickly go into the HR system, look for that employee file and see if there has been any recent performance improvement plan that this person has been put on. what was the last appraisal rating of this person? Is this person currently on notice period? If this person has some disciplinary action against him, if any of that pattern matches, it will go ahead and take remedial action, probably disabling the identity of that person, creating an email from a template to the reporting manager of the person, informing the reporting manager about the behavior, and asking and creating a task for the reporting manager to speak to the person and update it into the console, the outcome of that discussion. That's what SOAR can do. So you probably have not seen this use case in your organization, but I have recently configured. I support a couple of clients across industry vertical. So in the last 2 months, I have configured this use case across 5 SIEM and SOAR solutions. The 5 SIEM and solutions that I talk about, which is CrowdStrike Sentinel-1, Microsoft Sentinel, Google SecOps, and yeah, so Google SecOps and this logarithm. So I've configured this use case wherein their HR system is integrated with SOAR, and now SOAR has this capability to quickly pick up any insider, any employee related incident, and it has the logic integrated into it to quickly check for that employee file and see if there is any indicator which is complementing to that behavior. And if it finds any indicator, then it has been instructed to disable that employee account with immediate effect and also generate an email through a template to the reporting seat of employee as well as to the BU HR informing about this behavior, and then creating a task for both employee manager as well as BU HR to update the system of the outcome of the discussion that has happened. This has been implemented. So this is what automation is all about. Think of anything that you want to automate or any activity that you are currently manually performing. If there is any repetitive task that you do day in, day out, think of automating it. You may probably find out of the box automation playbook available in SOAR for that activity. If it's a common activity, if it is something out of the box, something that you just thought of, nobody has ever thought about it, then you will need to make efforts, probably think of avenues, think of options that will help you to put together a logic around that action and then create a SOAR playbook. So during some discussions with my clients, I have come across this use case wherein they were talking about insider threats, wherein we have seen from Gartner that logic bomb or insider threats have increased multifold in the last couple of years. In the last 2 years, insider threat activities have increased because of most of the organizations laying off their employees without even informing them or by giving them very short notice period. So this is coming out as a revenge, or they are basically behaving in this manner. So that is where I came up with this thought that let's do something. Let's enrich the existing automation for insider threat, have it integrated with the HR system so that we can get more information about that behavior and probably block that behavior then and there. So that's one example that I have actually configured. So we'll see if we can configure this example here also, because for that we need integration with an HR system. So I'll see if we have open source HR system available. Then I will show you end-to-end integration of it, wherein I will ask one of you to simulate an attack, to basically perform an action that you're not supposed to. And then you will see how Fusion SOAR will pick that action up, will do the entire analysis and will disable your account and also put the action into the ITSM system, along with sending an email to the reporting seat as well as to the BU HR, the corresponding HR or the other employee. That's what we will do. So that's what SOAR examples are. So SIEM is responsible to raise an alert on certain suspicious activities. SOAR workflows will pick up that as a trigger. It will perform queries. It will look into the system. It will look for additional avenues. It will perform enrichment if required. And then finally, it will take an action, close the case and manage case management. That's what SOAR is all about. So SOAR is an integral layer that works with SIEM. And it is not that SOAR is coming at the end. Sometimes SOAR is part of SIEM itself. For example, enrichment. Enrichment is a function which is getting more information, performing reputation analysis of IP addresses, URLs, and domains. This is a function of SOAR. So while SIEM is working, SOAR can also perform enrichment and then provide more context to an incident. And after the SOAR workflow is triggered, it can take remedial action. That's what SOAR does. Okay, so SOAR architecture, I've already shown you SOAR architecture here. So if you want to understand in technical terminology how SOAR architecture works, it starts with a trigger. SOAR requires a trigger. So you have workbook available in your SIEM solution. In the corresponding section of SOAR, you have a lot of automation configured. Some are manually configured, some are custom, some are out of the box. But how will they initiate? They will initiate based on a trigger. So what could be a trigger? Triggered could be an alert which is generated into the system. I see an incident, a detection, a threat. It could be a ticket also. If there's a ticket which is generated, you can also configure SOAR to pick it up and do action. Now, this is not SOAR for SIEM only. The SOAR is also outside of SIEM. Manual start. You can also manually initiate the SOAR. So, for example, you are investigating a brute force attack, and now you feel a need of disabling the end user, but you don't have access to Active Directory. So, what your admin has done, admin has created a SOAR playbook that you are assigned to, that you can use, that you can execute to disable a user. So you can manually start a SOAR playbook or workflow also. So what it will do after trigger, it will first collect as much data as it can. So it will collect data about that IP address or domain reputation from threat intelligence feed, from open source intelligence. It will also collect data about that user and asset context, additional information about that user. As I said, it will look into the user file into the HR system and check about that user recent ratings, employment status and other information. It will also collect additional data about that asset against which incident is generated, whether that asset is high priority asset, whether it's a VIP asset, whether it's a non-production system. So it will collect additional data, which is enrichment. After enrichment, it will execute a decision logic. Basis on the enrichment, you will have created conditions into the playbook or workflow. That decision logic will be executed, and basis on that, it will perform automated actions. So that automated actions could be blocking an IP address, isolating the host, disabling the account, and in the end, it will basically document everything into the case management. And sometimes you can configure SOAR to initiate an approval workflow. So before disabling a user account, SOAR will basically send an email to HR or to manager of that employee asking for approval. And as soon as that manager or HR approves that by clicking on that URL, they just need to click on URL, or there will be a button yes, no. So as soon as they click on that button yes, it will proceed further and it will perform that action. So you can also integrate human review, human in the loop, human analysis, and case management. That's how SOAR works. Right? So I don't have a demo right now configured because as I said, these are paid solutions. All the SIEM and SOAR solutions are paid. Even when you create workbook, there is an amount that you pay in terms of licensing, in terms of the number of triggers that has happened on that workbook. So I don't have anything prepared, but when we start the session from tomorrow, when we reach to this automation part, not only I will prepare workbook, I would encourage all of you to prepare as many as automation that you can do while we are covering that subject. So make sure that you do it. So few things that we will do, which is phishing simulation, brute force attack, malware analysis, few things that we will do in the training session. And then I will leave it to your discretion whether you want to explore more, because at the end of the day, you will have access to console throughout the clock, which is 24/7. So practice as much as you can. The more you practice, the more comfort level you will get. So it's totally up to you. Okay, now when you integrate SIEM plus SOAR, what happens? The SIEM is responsible for detection. So this is SIEM basically. The blue icon is for SIEM and the yellow one is for SOAR. So SIEM is doing detection. SOAR is simultaneously helping SIEM to enrich and automate and then respond to that detection. And then in the end, there is a human who is there to tune and improve. So you have regular optimization of the system wherein you will optimize. So remember, SIEM, I'm saying SIEM without SOAR will require manual responses all the time. And SOAR without SIEM is of no use because it will have nothing to do. So they both complement each other. Okay. Next, last two slides. SIEM versus EDR. Now, some people have this question in mind that when we do CrowdStrike Falcon administrator course, we also did these actions. We also had uh, performed blocking of IP addresses, domain, file hashes. We also did investigation. We also performed certain activity. So how SIEM is different now? Or is there something new that I will learn? Or this is just, same information that I will be shared with? No, let's understand the difference. So when it comes to EDR, EDR stands for, now those who are joining for the first time today, EDR stands for endpoint detection and response, which basically means that when it comes to EDR, you are dealing with just a subset of devices in your organization, and they are endpoints. So EDR is only endpoint focused. It is only there to protect your laptop, server, workstation, smartphone, and tablet from adversaries, from threats, from incidents. That's what EDR does. So its focus is on endpoints. When it comes to SIEM, SIEM's focus is quite wide in nature. It's organization wide because SIEM will not only help you, protect or complement EDR, but it will at the same time can also protect network devices, cloud applications, identity systems, endpoints, applications, and other things. So EDR is limited to endpoints, and SIEM has a wide scope which goes beyond endpoint to other devices and applications also. Then comes the data collected. When it comes to SIEM, SIEM collects telemetry data, endpoint telemetry. What is telemetry? We define that on write and on execute operations. So as part of a SIEM, SIEM will collect on write operations on the endpoint, which means an employee is using a laptop or a desktop or a server. So it is collecting real-time information in terms of what is happening on that system. If there is any additional registry entries getting created, if there is anything getting downloaded, if there is anything getting executed. So on write operations, which is you download anything from the internet, on write, you're writing something to the disk. You're trying to perform active encryption. So you are changing the configuration of a specific file. So again, a write operation on the disk. Right? Or on process activities, on execute activities, which is you're trying to install something. You've just opened a PowerShell and you've typed a command in the PowerShell. You've opened Notepad. So that's what EDR does. So if it finds any suspicious activity across on write and on execute operations, it will generate an alert. But what does SIEM do? SIEM goes beyond telemetry. SIEM also collect logs. So SIEM collects log, it normalizes those logs, and from there it identifies misbehaviors. It identifies indicators of compromise. That's what SIEM basically does. Then comes strength. So EDR is basically for granular detection and context on a single host. You deploy EDR on one system, it only works on that system. But when it comes to SIEM, SIEM is for broad visibility, which means when you configure SIEM, you don't configure it for one system. You configure it for a behavior. So if you want to collect event logs, you will collect event logs from all the systems at once. So it is basically for a wide scope. So it has broad visibility. It performs correlation across multiple sources and compliance. That's what SIEM does. Then comes EDR. EDR, when it comes to response, EDR has built-in response. process kill rollback on the host. That's what EDR does. So if EDR identifies any active encryption activity, some ransomware is trying to encrypt files and folders, EDR will be quick to kill that ransomware process and roll back that activity. That's what EDR does. If EDR identifies any write operations, any install operations on the endpoint, which is you're trying to install an application which is blocked by the admin, let's say TeamViewer, which is not allowed in your organization. So what EDR will do, it will see that there is an execute operations, there is an executable which is teamviewer.exe. So it will be quick to block that operation. That's EDR does. But what team can do, it can use SOAR integrations for cross-system actions. Not only that activity, because that's a real-time activity. What SOAR can do, it can disable users, it can network contain systems, you can also configure it to uninstall and install things also. SOAR have matured at that level wherein you can uninstall an existing application from the system using SOAR by giving it appropriate access through WMI, or you can also configure it to pick up something from the internet or from a common repository and push it on the system and install it also. That's what SOAR can also do. In the end, where exactly we use them? If we use EDR as a deep sensor and responder at the endpoint, limited scope, and we use SOAR as a central nervous system across the environment. So that's what we do. Now, in any corporate, what they do, they combine SIEM and SOAR together. They combine EDR, SIEM, and SOAR together, and that makes it XDR. So there is another terminology that we use, which is known as extended detection and response, because EDR is not sufficient alone. And if you only have SIEM, then it is also not sufficient. So what they do, they combine both of them together, EDR and SIEM, and it becomes XDR, extended detection and response solution, wherein you are merging the two products value proposition into one product line. So Microsoft has XDR, CrowdStrike has XDR, SentinelOne has XDR. XDR basically means you have a common dashboard where detections are consolidated from both the systems, and you have both the tools configured across your environment. That's what XDR is all about. So that's SIEM SOAR XDR. So you can see here, primary focus of SIEM is visibility and detection. SOAR is orchestration and automation. EDR is endpoint detects. Main input for SIEM is log and events. SOAR, it's the trigger alert from SIEM and EDR. And for EDR, it's endpoint telemetry. Main output of SIEM is alert and dashboards. SOAR output is automation, and EDR output is response on the endpoint, which is isolation, containment. That's what they do. Example, SIEM can flag impossible time travel or brute force attack. SOAR can auto disable the compromised account, and EDR can kill the malicious process if that happens. So let's say the impossible time travel attack is successful. The user is able to log in, the threat actor is able to log in on the system, and threat actor executes a malicious code. So what will EDR do? It will kill the process. Excuse me. It will kill the malicious process. What SIEM will do? SIEM will quickly generate an alert about that impossible time travel activity. And what SOAR will do? SOAR will pick up that activity, quickly enrich that activity, identify the IP address, the identity involved, the domain involved. If there is any C2 activity, command and control server activity, it will disable that user. It will block that IP address, URL, and domain. So that's how all of these tools can be worked together as XDR solution. And that's what most of the organizations are using. Now, when it comes to the vendors of these solutions, you can see. So for example, CrowdStrike NGC, I've intentionally put it on the top because that's what we are doing. And the SOAR part of it's Fusion SOAR. SentinelOne AI SIEM, SOAR is hyper automation. Splunk uses Splunk SOAR, which used to be known as Phantom. Microsoft Sentinel is a SIEM. Logic App, which is the inherent service of Microsoft for automation, workflow automation. IBM QRadar is SIEM. QRadar SOAR is the SOAR capability. Google SecOps, which used to be known as Chronicle, is the SIEM, and Simplify, it was acquired by Google, and it has now renamed as SecOps SOAR. Elastic Security is a SIEM, and Elastic SOAR, it has native SOAR capability, which is known as Elastic SOAR. Similarly, Logarithm is another SIEM and SOAR solution. And for this SIEM and SOAR solution, we have Logarithm SOAR. So these are SIEM and SOAR solutions, which are, I would say, top SIEM and SOAR solutions in the market. The first two SIEM and SOAR solutions, CrowdStrike and Sentinel-1, they are AI-enabled, machine learning-driven SIEM and SOAR solutions, wherein majority of the activity is done in the backend using the backend machine learning logic that they have. Splunk is more of a traditional solution, which is quite good for on-premises and legacy environment. It has Splunk Enterprise Security module that you can deploy in on-premises, and you can configure it based on your requirement. Splunk also has Splunk Cloud Security. So this is another solution that I have quite a good comfort level with, because I've been using this solution since the beginning. Microsoft Sentinel, CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1, they all were introduced at a later point in time. But Splunk has been there in the market for the last 20 years. So Splunk is good for enterprise. Microsoft Sentinel is good for environments where they are Microsoft heavy. So customers who are using Microsoft Azure Cloud for majority of their workloads and applications, they are using Windows client and server operating system. They are quite light on Linux. For them, Microsoft Sentinel is good because it's integrated in Microsoft Azure Cloud, and it has out of the box integration capability available for most of the Microsoft solutions, which is Microsoft 365, Microsoft Dynamics, Microsoft SharePoint, Microsoft Azure Portal, Microsoft other applications of Microsoft. IBM QRadar is once again, so Splunk and IBM QRadar, they are quite good for on-premises environment. Enterprises which still have majority of their workloads and application hosted in on-premises, and they also have legacy applications. So these solutions are quite good for those environments. Then comes Google Security Operations, a bit complicated solution in the market, very expensive solution, and it is primarily used by customers of Google, customers who need wide telemetry, and customers who are quite heavy on Google Cloud. They use Google Security Operations Chronicle. And then the left, which is Elastic Security, Logarithm, Alert Logic, Securonics. There are additional solutions that they are also used by customers across industry verticals, across multiple geographies, and these solutions have their own pros and cons. So this is about the vendor landscape, and these are the solutions on the top. These are the top two solutions which are quite high in demand as we speak today. Most of the customers are switching from legacy SIEM and SOAR solutions. Legacy, when I say legacy, it means Splunk, QRadar, Elastic Security, Logarithm. They're basically switching to SaaS-based SIEM and SOAR solutions, machine learning, AI-driven SIEM and SOAR solutions, which are CrowdStrike and Sentinel-1. So our focus is going to be on CrowdStrike from tomorrow onwards. That's it. So this brings to the end of the session, and I hope I have provided enough information to all of you to be on the same page as other participants. If you never had experience of SIEM and SOAR in the past, if you have not worked with any SIEM and SOAR solution in the past, by the end of this session, now you have understood the building blocks of a SIEM and SOAR solution, the architectural components, what this solution actually does, why this solution is important, what value proposition the solution brings on the table, what are different vendors of the SIEM and SOAR solution, where does CrowdStrike NG SIEM is placed. If you want to know more about CrowdStrike NG SIEM, guys, look for Gartner Magic Quadrant. Gartner has rated CrowdStrike Security as a leader for 7th year in a row. So for the last 7 years, CrowdStrike has been a leader when it comes to endpoint detection and response. And when it comes to SIEM and SOAR, CrowdStrike also is part of leaders quadrant. However, not the number one solution, because at number one, still there are other solutions which leads the chart. So that's about CrowdStrike, and that's about SIEM and SOAR fundamentals. So That is all for today. I will start with CrowdStrike Next Generation SIEM. So we will start with understanding the design and architectural aspects of CrowdStrike, that as a security engineer or architect, how do you design CrowdStrike for a customer uh, who is a small enterprise, or who is a large enterprise customer, who is a global customer, a customer who doesn't need to bother about any compliance, or a customer who needs to bother about multiple standards and compliance. So we will start with the design and architecture part. We will design and architect NG-SIEM solution for our prospective customers. Once the design and architecture decisions are complete, then we will put it into the implementation, configure the solution, and start with log ingestion, which is identifying various data sources which are available to us in the training session. We will have them ingested into the solution, and then we will move with the next phases. So by the end of this training, which is 6 to 7 weeks from now, you all will understand end to end, or you will have in-depth and comprehensive knowledge of CrowdStrike NG-SIEM. There will not be even a single topic or single concept that I will not cover in this training session. I will cover, as you know how I deliver my training sessions, they are quite in-depth. So I will cover every minute topic when it comes to NG-SIEM. And after completing this training, you can discuss, you can talk to any person who is an expert in this domain. Take my words, you will answer their questions confidently. You will leave a lasting impression on that person. But you need to make sure that you attend all the sessions. You need to make sure that you remain attentive in the session. You need to make sure that you do all the hands-on lab. You need to make sure that you do over and above what I cover in the training session, because you will have access to the console throughout the week, 24 into 7, round the clock. So think of additional use cases, think of additional configurations, do it. If you come across any error, take a screenshot, put it into the WhatsApp group, let others go through it. Probably they also faced it. They will respond it to you. If they don't respond, Farhan will respond. If he doesn't respond, I will be the last person to respond. But you will get answer to your question within 4 hours. So 4 hours is the SLA of our WhatsApp group. I will be the last person to answer within 4 hours of putting your query, because I check my WhatsApp once in 4 hours, even during training sessions when I take break. So that's what you need to ensure. And I can guarantee after this training is over, you will have good employment prospects also, because CrowdStrike is extensively hiring. They keep on coming up with positions within Siemens source space, within EDR, XDR, cloud and identity space, as well as other industries, other customers, other corporates are hiring for this position. So that's about Siemens SOAR fundamentals. Will you provide the real-time use case implementation that org needed at its configuration? Yes, Sandhya. As I said, the use cases that we will configure in this training session, they are the actual use cases that you will find in the organization. But since this is a training session, we have limited time frame, let's say 40 hours. Obviously, we will not be able to configure more than 5-6 use cases. But at the same time, I will provide you a list of 300 plus use cases across a variety of application and data sources that you will find in a production environment being configured, because that is where it's a continuous operation. And that is where you have multiple people available to manage the show.